More than a month since the BP oil disaster started, no one knows how to stop the oil leak, how much has already leaked, how much continues to leak, where the oil is, how to prevent it from reaching the shore, how to clean it from the shore, or why the Obama administration keeps giving out environmental waivers for more drilling, even after the president said there would be a temporary moratorium on new drilling. The BP disaster and the government's response to the disaster are the subject of the second part of my interview today with Energy Secretary Steven Chu. Across the country, there was concern. I think shock turned to concern is now turning to real anger. And I sense, just anecdotally, and I'm starting to feel some of it myself, that people are fed up that this isn't fixed, and that we all know that people are trying and that this is a difficult thing that doesn't have an obvious solution. But is there some sense in which we are at the company's mercy here, at BP's mercy? If we did push them out of the way and took over ourselves in terms of the government taking over, could we have a better chance of getting this thing shut down?
It's not clear. But first, as soon as this disaster occurred, President Obama and his administration responded almost immediately in various aspects, both to mitigate as the oil begins to wash ashore, to line up the resources. Within the Department of Energy, the president has charged me to assemble a team of not only people within the Department of Energy, but some of the brightest people to actually engage with BP, come up with newer ideas that perhaps they might not have thought of. And so we've been doing this for the past 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks. We have people there in Houston. There are daily tag-ups, typically an hour to a day. I've been down there once. I will be flying down there later this afternoon and spending the next couple of days helping BP engineers to think through what are the possibilities. Are there things they could have overlooked? How can you accelerate this if Plan A doesn't work? What about B, C, and D? And to having this pipeline a response should something go wrong in the mitigation plans that are now in place.
I know that about a week ago you floated the idea of trying to help with the puzzle of trying to shut the wellhead by using high-energy gamma rays to get better imaging of the busted blowout preventer. Is that something that has been tried? Is imaging that blowout preventer seen as something that's a priority? How would something like that work?
Well, this was a little over 2 weeks ago. We didn't know the state of the blowout preventer. We didn't know whether the valves had actually closed. The command signals were given. The ROVs went down there and essentially pushed in the hydraulics to make sure they were closed, but you still couldn't be sure. And so just as you use X-rays for dental, you have a source of radiation, you have a plate behind it, we could use very high energy gamma rays that have high enough energy that they can actually penetrate through several inches of steel. And so with using that technology, we have found that what the conditions of those valves are. Some of them are closed. So that was a great help to know that at least some of the valves have closed and the locking pins are behind them.
In terms of what is still being tried and the options that are still available, we've heard a lot about this attempt to do a sort of top kill in which they're going to try to just clog the leak. Also some concerns that might actually make the leak worse if it doesn't work. Do you have any insight that you can share with us in terms of the best available options? I'm worried that the only deep blowouts I've ever read about, ever known about, were all solved with relief wells, and nothing like that, as far as I can tell, will be drilled until August.
Well, there have been blowout preventer valves that have prevented massive leaks. Their so-called top kill or dynamical kill will be tried if, as the instrumentation is brought on to the BOP, which should be actually today, we will be now closely measuring what the pressure is as you go up the stack on the various valves. With those diagnostics, which we hope to have tonight, and probably pull a few all-nighters, we can then determine what's the best strategy going forward.
And that, knowing what the pressure would be in the stack, would tell you how risky it would be to try to do the top kill?
That's right. It will give you more insight on what the condition of the valves were, whether you can put enough flow into those, into the blowout prevention stack, so that you can use the force of the mud going down to overcome the gas, oil, and mud coming up.
Mr. Secretary, a couple of weeks after the Deepwater Horizon sank, after the explosion and those 11 workers were killed, you said at that time that you thought it was not a mistake to have announced expanded offshore drilling. This far into it, with the well still out of control, do you still feel like that wasn't a mistake?
Well, I'm not sure whether I said it was not a mistake. I think has to be a moratorium on new drilling offshore until we find out what the issues are, what the dangers are, retrofit what needs to be retrofitted, and to proceed in a much safer way. And so the president has been quite clear on that.
It would seem to me that the ability to prevent a blowout and to cap a blown well is a necessary precondition for being able to say that we know how to drill safely for oil. It seems like this disaster has proven that we clearly can't prevent a blowout or cap a blown well at even 5,000 feet. Even since the Deepwater sank, we've had a handful of drilling applications excluded from environmental permitting that are for even deeper water. It just seems like we've now proven it's not safe to drill this deeply because we don't know how to fix it when things go wrong at this step. How could we ever approve this going forward unless there's some major technological advances?
Well, I don't know the details of what was approved and not approved. I only know what I read in the papers. But let me just say that it is very important as we go forward to look at what things we can do to guarantee that it would be highly unlikely that something like this will ever happen again.
Mr. Secretary, I would say I'm worried that you only know what you read in the papers about what's being approved. One of the things that's been frustrating is to hear the Obama administration announce that there's a moratorium on going forward with new approvals for offshore drilling, and then to keep reading in the paper over and over again that actually, even though that's been announced publicly, the approvals have kept chugging along. Is there a situation here in which the right hand of the government doesn't know what the left hand is doing? I've been worried about the relationship between the government and BP. I'm starting to worry about the internal relationship among government agencies in terms of actually knowing what we're doing right now.
Well, again, I think you and I read probably in the New York Times this morning, I read that there was an interpretation of what you mean by new permits, new drilling. That's what I read in the New York Times, and personally, I think we should stop all new drilling, whether it's pre-approved or whatever, until we get to the bottom of this. I think that will be done. And so, yes, the government is a big bureaucracy, and I hope that's been fixed.
Dr. Steven Chu, U.S. Secretary of Energy, thank you very much for joining us. I know you're incredibly busy. You're on your way back down to the Gulf. A lot of people counting on you to add some real intellectual firepower to the effort to stop this thing. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you.